My father stood in front of the jury, wiping a fake tear from his eye, and swore under oath that I had not worked a single day since graduating from Spelman College. He called me a parasite. He told the judge I was a lazy, entitled daughter who stole $5 million from my late mother's trust fund. I sat at the defense table, fixing the cuff of my emerald suit, and offered him a polite smile. He thought he was sending me to federal prison. He had absolutely no idea that the judge presiding over our case was about to receive a classified envelope from the Pentagon revealing exactly what I had been doing for the last decade. Before I tell you how my own family walked blindly into a federal trap, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever let toxic family members dig their own graves. My name is Naomi. I am 34 years old. Right now, I am sitting in the chillingly quiet courtroom of the United States District Court. The heavy mahogany paneling and the stark fluorescent lights usually make people sweat. But my resting heart rate is a perfectly calm 60 beats per minute. I fold my hands on the polished wooden table in front of me. I do not fidget. I do not cry. I just watch the man who raised me perform the greatest acting job of his entire life. Marcus is 60 years old. In our community, he is considered a pillar of excellence. He owns a massive real estate development firm. He sponsors charity galas. He shakes hands with mayors and pastors. Today, he is playing the role of the heartbroken, grieving widower. He is wearing his best tailored charcoal suit, the one he specifically bought for my mother's funeral just 3 months ago. He grips the edges of the witness stand, letting his shoulders slump just enough to look vulnerable. The 12 members of the jury lean forward, completely captivated by his sorrow. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my father begins, his voice trembling with manufactured grief. I stand before you as a broken man. My beautiful wife Beatrice passed away recently, and while I was mourning the love of my life, my eldest daughter was busy robbing her grave. He points a shaking finger directly at me. The jury members turn their heads in unison, glaring at me with absolute disgust. I maintain my neutral expression. Look at her, my father continues, his voice rising in righteous indignation. Naomi has always been a disappointment to our family name. We gave her everything. We paid her tuition, hoping she would make something of herself, hoping she would embody the excellence our family stands for. But she has not worked a single legitimate day since she walked across that graduation stage over a decade ago. She contributes nothing. She is a freeloader who decided that instead of earning an honest living, she would manipulate her dying mother and siphon $5 million from a sacred trust fund. The courtroom gasps. It is a soft sound, but it echoes loudly in the cavernous space. My defense attorney, Kenneth, sits next to me. He does not object. He does not interrupt the performance. We had discussed this strategy beforehand. Let them speak. Let them put every lie on the official court record. The more my father perjured himself, the tighter the federal noose would become around his own neck. My father wipes his eyes with a pristine white handkerchief. He tells the jury how he discovered the missing funds. He describes the sleepless nights wondering how his own flesh and blood could be so cold and calculating. He paints a picture of a daughter who spent her 20s lounging in expensive apartments, taking luxury vacations, and living entirely off the sweat and blood of her hardworking parents. I listen to his words and marvel at the sheer audacity of his projection. He is accusing me of the exact crimes he is currently committing. He claims I have no job. He claims I am a leech. If the jury actually knew the truth, they would be paralyzed with shock. For the past 10 years, I have not been lounging in luxury apartments. I have been serving as a senior cyber data analytics director for the United States Department of Defense. I hold a top-secret clearance. My daily routine involves tracking international money laundering rings, dismantling cyber terror networks, and protecting the financial infrastructure of this country. I work in windowless rooms with people who do not exist on paper. I do not have a public LinkedIn profile. I do not post my promotions on social media. To the outside world and to my arrogant family, I am just a quiet woman with no visible means of income. They mistook my silence for failure. They mistook my privacy for laziness. My father pulls out a stack of banking documents from his breast pocket. He waves them in the air like a weapon. These bank statements prove everything he declares, his voice booming across the room. They show the exact dates the funds were wired out of Beatrice Trust. They show the destination accounts. Accounts hidden behind shell companies that Naomi set up to hide her tracks. She thought she was so smart. She thought because she spends all day on her computer doing whatever it is she does, that she could outsmart the banks. But we caught her. We found the digital trail. I look at the fake bank statements he is waving around. They are brilliant forgeries. He clearly paid someone a lot of money to fabricate those routing numbers and signature authorizations. He built an entire alternate reality out of forged paper and crocodile tears. He truly believes that because he is a wealthy, respected man in the community, his word will automatically override mine. He assumes the judge will look at me, a seemingly unemployed single woman, and immediately side with the distinguished patriarch. Your Honor, I am not asking for vengeance. My father lies smoothly, looking directly at the judge. I am asking for justice for my late wife. I am asking that you freeze all of Naomi accounts and return the $5 million to the estate where it belongs. She needs to be held accountable. She needs to learn that she cannot just steal from her own family and walk away unpunished. I feel a slight shift in the air behind me. The gallery is packed with my family members who came to watch my public execution. I can feel their eyes burning into the back of my neck. They came dressed in their Sunday best, ready to watch the black sheep of the family finally get slaughtered. They believe every word falling from my father's mouth. They believe I am a thief. They believe they have won. My father finishes his testimony by lowering his head and burying his face in his hands. It is a masterful theatrical finish. The jury looks completely convinced. Several of them are glaring at me, shaking their heads in disgust. The judge, a stern-faced man who commands absolute respect, clears his throat and prepares to speak. The heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom remain closed, but I know who is waiting on the other side. The trap has been set. The bait has been taken. My father has just sworn under penalty of perjury to a narrative that is about to dismantle his entire life. Judge Sterling taps his heavy wooden gavel against the sounding block. He announces we will take a brief 15-minute recess before the defense begins its cross-examination. He steps down from the bench and disappears through the heavy oak doors behind him. The moment the judge leaves the room, the rigid formality of the court vanishes. The atmosphere instantly shifts from solemn to predatory. My father steps down from the witness box, but he does not return to the plaintiff table. Instead, he walks directly to the front row of the gallery where my younger sister Chloe and her husband Trent are sitting. Trent is 32 years old. He is a hedge fund director who thinks he is the smartest person in any room he enters. He is a white man who loves being married into a prominent, wealthy black family because it gives him a convenient shield of false progressiveness. He uses our family name and my father's connections to open doors in elite political circles he could never access on his own merit. Right now, Trent is leaning casually over the wooden partition that separates the gallery from the trial floor. He shoots his cuffs, shooting a perfect glimpse of his platinum Rolex. He looks directly at me and his blue eyes are flat and dead. You really should have taken the quiet settlement we offered last month, Naomi, he says. His voice carries easily across the silent aisle, intentionally loud enough for the rest of the family to hear. We were trying to be generous. We were trying to keep this out of the public record for your sake. But you just had to be stubborn. Now look at you. You are going to leave this courthouse with absolutely nothing and a criminal referral on your record. Chloe sits beside him, perfectly manicured and draped in seasonal designer couture. She is 30 years old and has been the golden child since the day she was born. She runs a vanity lifestyle brand that produces zero actual profit but looks fantastic on her social media grid. She crosses her legs and gives me a look of profound, exaggerated pity. You are embarrassing us, Naomi, she says, shaking her head slowly. You are embarrassing the entire bloodline. Daddy worked his whole life to build black excellence, to create real generational wealth for this family. He broke through concrete ceilings so we could sit at tables our grandparents only dreamed of. And what do you do with that legacy? You sit in your cheap apartment doing absolutely nothing for 10 years, and then you try to steal the money Mom left behind. She does not stop there. The audience of aunts and uncles sitting in the rows behind her fuels her performance. It is just like when you refused to join the corporate law firm Dad set up for you. Chloe continues, her tone dripping with absolute venom. It is just like when you stopped attending the alumni galas and the charity board meetings. You never wanted to put in the actual work to elevate us. You just wanted the reward. You make us all look like a terrible stereotype. The lazy relative waiting for a handout while everyone else builds the empire. Trent chuckles softly. He reaches over and pats my father's shoulder, playing the role of the supportive savior, holding the broken family together. Do not let her get to you, Marcus, Trent says, using that clinical detached tone he reserves for people he views as beneath him. She is just acting out because she knows the game is over. People like her always play the victim when they are finally held accountable. It is a classic behavioral pattern for the chronically unmotivated. Do not let her drag your reputation down with her. He actually thinks he is the one protecting my father's legacy. He stands there, a wealthy white man, lecturing me about my failure to uphold my own family's black excellence, while looking down his nose at my simple emerald suit. I do not break eye contact. I do not raise my voice. I do not give them the reaction they are desperately trying to provoke. I simply reach for the glass of water on my defense table and take a slow, deliberate sip. The ice clinks softly against the glass. My lawyer Kenneth sits beside me, casually reviewing his legal pad. Kenneth is a former federal prosecutor who usually charges $1,000 an hour and holds a security clearance almost as high as mine. But right now, he is wearing a modest off-the-rack suit simply to play the part of an overwhelmed public defender type. He does not even bother looking up at them. He knows exactly what I know. Trent mistakes my silence for submission. He leans further over the rail, a smug smirk playing on his lips. I reviewed your banking history, Naomi, he says, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. The real records, not the fantasy defense you are trying to spin. You barely have $2,000 in your checking account. How are you even paying for this lawyer sitting next to you? Is he working pro bono for the courtroom exposure? Chloe places a hand over her heart, playing the devastated sister to perfection. Mom would be so ashamed of you, she says, her voice cracking flawlessly. She wanted us to be a shining example of what a powerful black family could achieve in this city. Instead, you dragged us into a courtroom to fight over her money like common criminals. You are a disgrace to everything she built. I look at Chloe. I look at the massive diamond tennis bracelet sparkling brightly on her wrist as she wipes away a fake tear. I know exactly which offshore account paid for that bracelet. I know the exact routing number. I know the IP address of the encrypted laptop Trent used to transfer the stolen funds from my mother's trust to buy it. They are standing in a federal building, lecturing me about black excellence and generational wealth, while literally wearing the stolen evidence of their own federal crimes. The heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom swing open. The bailiff steps out into the room. All rise, he calls out, his voice echoing against the high ceiling. Judge Sterling is returning to the bench. The recess is over. Trent gives me one last mocking smile before sitting back down next to my sister. He whispers something in her ear that makes her giggle softly behind her hand. They are so incredibly confident in their victory. They have stacked the deck, forged the bank papers, and bought the witnesses. They are absolutely certain that the next 30 minutes will end with me leaving this building in handcuffs. Judge Sterling settles into his high-backed leather chair and adjusts his robes. The heavy silence of the federal courtroom returns instantly. Attorney David Pierce, my father's lead counsel, stands up from the plaintiff table. Pierce is a high-priced shark known for destroying reputations with surgical precision. He buttons his tailored jacket and approaches the bench carrying a thick, glossy binder. This is the moment my family has been waiting for, the final nail in my coffin. Your Honor, Pierce begins, his voice echoing with practiced theatricality. The plaintiff would like to submit Exhibit A into evidence. These are the certified financial records obtained by our private forensic accounting team. They detail the exact digital pathway the defendant used to siphon $5 million from her late mother's trust fund. Pierce places the heavy binder on the judge's desk with a loud, deliberate thud. He turns to face the jury box. He walks slowly, making sure every single juror is hanging on his every word. He tells them that I use sophisticated routing software to obscure the transactions. He paints a vivid picture of a greedy, ungrateful daughter sitting in the shadows, moving digital money across borders while her family mourned. He claims these documents prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that I created shell companies in the Cayman Islands to hide my stolen wealth. He speaks with such absolute conviction that several jurors nod along in agreement. Their faces are tight with disgust as they look at me. I turn my attention to the evidence monitors mounted across the courtroom displaying the digital copies of the bank statements. I let a slow, deliberate smirk touch the corner of my mouth. From his seat in the gallery, Trent sees my smile. His confident posture stiffens for a fraction of a second. He clearly thinks I am having a mental break. He thinks I am smiling out of pure desperation. He has absolutely no idea what I am actually looking at. Trent and my father hired someone very expensive to fabricate these documents. The forgery is a masterpiece of deception. The routing numbers look entirely legitimate. The digital signatures mimic international banking protocols flawlessly. The offshore account designations are perfectly formatted to trick a civilian financial auditor. For a standard federal court, it is irrefutable proof of grand larceny. But I am not a civilian, and I do not spend my days playing on a laptop in a cheap apartment like my sister Chloe claims. For the last decade, I have been the ghost in the machine for the United States Department of Defense. I am a senior cyber data analytics director. I hold a top-secret clearance that requires background checks so invasive they interview people I knew in middle school. My actual job, the one my family dismisses as a shameful lie, involves tracking the movement of illicit funds across global terror networks. I design the exact algorithms the Pentagon uses to detect international money laundering. I know how dark money moves because I built the invisible architecture that tracks it for the United States government. Watching my father and Trent submit these forged documents as official court evidence is like watching a toddler try to explain quantum physics to the scientist who wrote the textbook. They are so blinded by their own arrogance, they did not realize the fatal error in their fake paper trail. The offshore routing numbers they fabricated do not just point to a random shell company. By pure catastrophic coincidence, the fake account structure they purchased on the black market mirrors a flagged server network currently monitored by my own intelligence division. By submitting these specific documents into the official federal court record, my father has not just lied to a judge, he has legally tied his own name and his own real estate empire to a financial network currently under active investigation by the United States Treasury for violating international sanctions. He thinks he is proving I am a thief. In reality, he is handing the federal government a signed confession to international money laundering and wire fraud. Pierce finishes his grand closing argument by pointing a manicured finger directly at my chest. He demands that the court immediately freeze all my remaining assets. He demands a summary judgment in favor of my father. He formally requests that the judge refer me to the district attorney for immediate criminal prosecution. The gallery is completely still. Chloe leans her head on Trent's shoulder, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. My father bows his head at the plaintiff table, burying his face in his hands to play the devastated patriarch one last time. They are glowing with victory. They think they have completely destroyed me. They think the game is over and they have won the grand prize. Judge Sterling slowly closes the leather binder. He takes off his reading glasses and sets them down on the mahogany wood. His expression is carved from stone. He looks over at the jury box and then he turns his piercing gaze directly onto me. The weight of his authority fills the entire room. He presses his hands flat against the bench. He states that the evidence presented by the plaintiff is highly irregular but incredibly damning. He speaks about the sacred bond of family trust and the absolute severity of financial elder abuse. He says that the financial trail presented in Exhibit A leaves very little room for interpretation regarding where the funds originated and where they currently reside. Every word he speaks sounds like a heavy iron door slamming shut on my future. My father peeks through his fingers to watch my reaction. Trent crosses his arms over his chest, completely satisfied with his handiwork. Judge Sterling picks up his heavy wooden gavel. He holds it suspended in the air. The polished wood gleams under the bright fluorescent lights of the courtroom. The tension in the room is so thick it threatens to snap. He looks down at my defense attorney Kenneth and asks if we have any final motions or evidence to present before he officially strikes his gavel, issues his ruling, and closes this case permanently. The heavy wooden gavel hovers in the air. That polished wood gleams under the bright fluorescent lights, pulling my mind backward. The anticipated crack of the judge striking the block sounds remarkably like the sharp clinking of crystal glasses. The courtroom fades away, replaced by the suffocating atmosphere of the formal dining room at our family estate exactly 3 months ago. It was the Sunday evening immediately following my mother's funeral. The air in the sprawling mansion was thick and oppressive heavy, with the overwhelming scent of white lilies and roasted meats. My mother's ornate high-backed chair sat empty at the head of the long mahogany table. I sat near the far end wearing a simple black morning dress completely drained from a week of profound grief. I kept my eyes focused on the porcelain plate in front of me, trying to process the reality that the only person in this family who actually loved me was gone. My father Marcus sat at the opposite end of the table. The tears he had so publicly shed at the gravesite just hours earlier had completely vanished. He swirled a glass of expensive bourbon, his posture relaxed and unnervingly comfortable. He did not look like a man who had just buried his wife of 35 years. He looked like a CEO who had just completed a hostile takeover. Chloe and Trent sat directly across from me. They had barely spoken to me during the entire funeral service, but now the masks were beginning to slip. Trent sliced his steak with slow, deliberate movements. He chewed, swallowed, and looked at me with that signature arrogant smirk. He was a white man sitting at the table of a wealthy black family, feeling entirely too comfortable weaponizing our own cultural expectations against me. "It is a real shame you could not chip in for the floral arrangements at the church," Naomi Trent said, his voice cutting cleanly through the quiet chatter of the relatives. He wiped his mouth with a monogrammed linen napkin. "I mean, we understand, of course. Living on a tight budget in that little apartment of yours means making difficult financial sacrifices. But it just looked a bit cheap that Chloe and Marcus had to cover your portion of your own mother's memorial." The sheer audacity of his comment hung in the air. I had tried to pay for the flowers. I had offered to cover the entire catering bill for the repast. Marcus had deliberately blocked my payments, insisting the family business would handle everything. He set up this narrative specifically to humiliate me. Chloe chimed in immediately, adjusting the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the expensive lace tablecloth. "Mom was always so terribly worried about you, Naomi," she said, her voice dripping with venom, masquerading as sibling concern. "She spent her last days stressing over how you would survive without a real career or a husband to support you. You really let her down, you know. You have a degree from Spelman College. You had every door opened for you. And you chose to do absolutely nothing. You bring zero value to this family name." I slowly looked up from my plate. Around the massive dining table, my aunts, uncles, and cousins sat in complete silence. They continued eating their candied yams and collard greens, pretending not to hear the vicious attack happening right in front of them. In our community, wealth dictates respect and influence. Marcus held the purse strings to the family investments. Marcus controlled the access to the country club memberships and the corporate board seats. Because Marcus held the power, nobody dared to speak up. They just looked down at their plates, entirely complicit in my public execution. My father tapped his silver fork against his crystal bourbon glass. The sharp ringing sound demanded absolute obedience from everyone in the room. He stood up slowly, smoothing the lapels of his custom-tailored morning suit. The facade of the loving, grieving father melted away, leaving only a cold and calculating predator. "Your sister is absolutely right," Marcus declared, his voice booming across the dining room, devoid of any paternal warmth. "Your mother and I sacrificed our youth to build an empire of black excellence. We fought tooth and nail for a seat at tables our own grandparents were not even allowed to clean. We created real generational wealth. And you, Naomi, have squandered every single opportunity we handed you. You are a lazy, unmotivated stain on this family legacy." He paced slowly behind his empty chair, letting his harsh words sink into the minds of the silent relatives. I remained perfectly still, gripping the linen napkin in my lap. I knew my mother better than any of them. Beatrice despised Marcus and his relentless greed. She knew exactly what kind of ruthless man she had married, and she loved me precisely because I refused to participate in his shallow corporate games. But I could not defend her memory right now without exposing my own secrets. I maintained my absolute silence, letting them expose the darkest depths of their true nature. Trent chuckled softly, pouring himself another glass of wine. "It is tragic, really," Trent added, shaking his head. "You have all this pedigree, all this history, and you choose to be a parasite. It makes the whole family look bad to our investors." I stared directly into Trent's cold blue eyes. I did not scream. I did not throw my glass. I I simply sat there enduring the toxic barrage while cataloging every single insult. They thought my silence was weakness. They thought my lack of a flashy job title meant I was defenseless. They had no idea they were insulting a woman who routinely briefed military generals on global security threats. Marcus walked back to his seat, but he did not sit down. He reached into the inner breast pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a thick, folded legal document. He slapped it down onto the mahogany table with a resounding thud that made several ants jump in their seats. Because of your chronic instability and your sheer lack of ambition, Marcus announced, his eyes locking onto mine with absolute malice, I have decided to make some immediate changes to how this family operates moving forward. Your mother was too soft on you. She enabled your laziness. But I will not allow you to drain our resources any longer. I am executing the final directives of your mother's estate right here and right now. Chloe smiled brightly, leaning closer to Trent. The predatory anticipation in her eyes was unmistakable. The trap they had spent weeks planning was finally springing shut. Marcus placed his hand flat over the legal document, preparing to strip away every last remnant of my security. Marcus slides the heavy document across the polished mahogany surface. The thick pages stop right at the edge of my dinner plate. The gold foil seal of my mother's estate attorney sits in the corner, but the paper feels entirely wrong. I do not touch it immediately. I just stare at the bold black ink on the cover page. This is an updated will, my father announces, his voice echoing in the silent room. Your mother and I had a long, heartbreaking conversation during her final weeks. She finally opened her eyes to the truth about you, Naomi. She realized that leaving you a substantial trust fund would only enable your chronic laziness. She tasked me and Trent with restructuring her assets to protect the family legacy. Trent nods solemnly, attempting to look like a responsible fiduciary rather than a common thief. It was a complex legal process, Trent adds, pouring himself another glass of a vintage Bordeaux my mother had been saving for a special occasion. Beatrice wanted to ensure the wealth stayed within the working, productive members of this family. We simply executed her dying wishes. We redirected your portion of the trust into a high-yield investment portfolio managed by my firm. It will be held securely for Chloe's future children. You know, the ones who will actually carry on the black excellence this family represents. I slowly reach out and flip open the heavy cover page. My eyes scan the legal jargon. It is an absolute masterpiece of corporate theft. The clauses are completely packed with predatory hedge fund terminology designed to strip the beneficiary of all rights while granting the executor total immunity. My mother, Beatrice, was a high school literature teacher who despised corporate greed. She would never use terms like capital reallocation and deferred dividend shielding. Then I see the signature at the bottom of the final page. My heart turns to absolute ice. The handwriting is a nearly flawless imitation, but the loop on the letter B is tilted at the wrong angle. My mother always wrote her signature with a sharp, aggressive slant she developed in her 20s. This signature is too perfectly rounded. Trent and Marcus had forged my dying mother's signature to steal my inheritance. I look up from the fraudulent document. I do not scream. I do not flip the table. I simply fold my hands in my lap and look directly at my father. He expects tears. He expects begging. When he receives nothing but calm silence, a flicker of genuine irritation crosses his face. Because you are no longer a beneficiary under this revised document? Marcus continues, his tone growing colder and far more aggressive. You no longer have any right to the resources of this estate. That includes your access to the family accounts. He extends an open hand across the table, palm facing up. Hand over the black American Express card, Naomi, and the keys to the guest house. You are done bleeding us dry. Chloe leans forward, her eyes gleaming with absolute delight. She has waited her entire life for this specific moment. She wants to see me stripped of everything, humiliated and thrown out into the street. It is just business, Naomi, she says, offering a sickly sweet smile. You have to understand, we simply cannot fund your lifestyle anymore. It is time for you to grow up and face the real world. I slowly reach into my tailored blazer. I pull out the black American Express card my father gave me 5 years ago. I have not used it a single time since the day he handed it to me. My federal salary and my classified bonuses are deposited directly into a secure government credit union account they know absolutely nothing about. I place the pristine unused credit card onto the mahogany table. I pull the brass key to the guest house from my pocket and set it gently next to the card. Marcus snatches both items off the table as if they might catch fire. "Good," he says, slipping them into his pocket. "Now go upstairs, pack whatever cheap clothes you brought with you, and get out of my house. I want you off this property tonight." Several of the aunts and uncles shift uncomfortably in their seats, but still nobody says a single word. My father is officially throwing his eldest daughter out into the night, immediately following her mother's funeral, and the entire family is too cowardly to intervene. I push my chair back. The wooden legs scrape loudly against the marble floor. I stand up, smoothing the front of my black morning dress. I do not say a word to any of them. I simply turn and begin walking toward the grand foyer. "Wait!" Trent calls out, his voice dripping with condescension. I stop and look back over my shoulder. Trent pushes his chair back and stands up. He reaches into the inner pocket of his designer suit jacket and pulls out a sleek leather wallet. He deliberately pulls out a single crisp $100 bill. He walks around the table, approaching me with the swagger of a man who believes he holds all the power in the world. He stops 2 feet away from me. He holds the bill between his index and middle fingers. He does not hand it to me. He opens his fingers and lets the $100 bill flutter to the hardwood floor, landing directly at the tip of my shoes. "Call an Uber," Trent says, his lips curling into a cruel sneer. "The family drivers have the night off, and our cars do not carry thieves. Consider this a final charitable donation from the family you disappointed. Do not ever say we did not take care of you." Chloe laughs. It is a sharp, vicious sound that echoes through the dining room. Marcus smiles proudly at his son-in-law. They have orchestrated the ultimate humiliation. They have stripped me of my home, my inheritance, and my dignity right in front of the entire family. I look down at the crumpled $100 bill on the floor. I look back up at Trent's smug face. He is waiting for me to bend down and pick it up. He wants to watch me grovel for his spare change. I step directly over the money. My heel leaves a faint scuff mark on the face of the bill as I walk past it. I do not look back. I walk straight up the grand sweeping staircase to pack my bags, leaving them sitting in their stolen mansion surrounded by their stolen wealth. They think they have just won the war. They have absolutely no idea they just handed the federal government everything it needs to destroy them. I enter my old bedroom and pull a simple tactical duffel bag from the back of the closet. I do not bother folding the expensive silk dresses or the designer handbags my mother bought me years ago to make me fit her aesthetic. I leave them all hanging